So we could get started, Greg. I just wanted to welcome everybody and remind you, go ahead and use the Q&A function uh, on Zoom, or if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can post questions there also. And Greg, as you go, feel free to ask questions and answer questions, and we'll be good to go. All right. So take it away.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you
Day
so much.
three,
Thank you.
right?
Let's start. So, yeah, maybe I'm going to start today with, what we've been doing, a short recap of the topics with case studies we've looked at together these past weeks, and the developments too in this Sajra Berkeley Mitra cooperation. So, I'm going to share my screen with you guys first, maybe. So, let me see. No, it's not what we're going to do today. So here we are. So the first thing I wanted to share with everyone is we have a new page that, has all the information, all the cool stuff on the main sajra.org website. So we created a page that will gather all the tools, slides, videos in one place. And so this is a page you can find very easily from the main, Sajra.org website homepage. And there, if you click on the links, learn more, you will land here. And here, there's a little bit of background information about, the whole cooperation between Mishra and Sajra. And then the webinars are there, the topics as well with timing. So if you don't have time to listen to everything and you want to go to a section that gives you an idea, we'll add timestamps probably in the coming weeks to the YouTube videos to make it even easier to navigate to case studies. And the slides are there too. So, scrolling down. So here you have the slides we use. They're very easy to navigate to from the page itself. You don't have to click or go anywhere. So you can look at what we've been doing these past weeks. So we'll keep posting here all the videos. So you see, for example, that's all the case studies we went through last week. So for each case study, I try to specify the tool used, the application, the kind of textual environment we worked on, and what was the focus or the point of doing this. So how to identify and evaluate online-based resources, for example. So everything is listed there. And if we scroll down, then we have this little paragraph here. It's quite important because we're launching a Discord server. So for those who are not familiar with Discord, it's a very easy to use app with forums. So you can build a community and exchange information in a way that's structured in threads, and that's easy to process. If you click on this, you will land on our page where you can sign up or sign in if you already have Discord account, and there you will you will be with us on this channel, and you'll be able to participate in discussions. You'll be able to post ideas you have, share prompts you tried, or new tools you discovered. So we're thinking it'd be great if we had one place where we have all the new AI news that can impact our work as translators there, and if we can exchange things. Because as you will see today, the prompting, the art of prompting can yield very different outputs on different tools. And so sharing this and our discoveries and experience together would be pretty awesome, I think, and would help everyone. There are so many things, and as I've tried to show, right, nothing is perfect and definitive, but all these tools are amazing exploration tools. And so sharing, how they respond to various queries is essential, I think, and we can learn together. So if you are interested, please join us there. I will keep posting things there, keep posting on a regular basis. In the future, we're thinking of adding very short tutorials. For example, how to use Claude, 2 or 3 minutes just on that topic. Then we can have tutorials on special point, like find all entities in this text. How do I do that? 2 or 3 minutes. And so that's like tutorials we can keep posting, developing. But then we have to know if there is an interest as well in this or something else, and we can keep producing. I think these little snippets that will really be helpful for those of us who just started the journey with AI and LLMs. So that's why having community on the Discord channel is important, and we'll be really developing this tool in the future. Now, before starting today, as always, I like to start with a little more abstract presentation about essentially prompts at this stage, but we sort different phases of the translation work. First, this is what define a little bit, the whole path or flight plan we have had on this journey to explore AI tools together. So now we're at the phase slowly we're reaching the translation process itself and then the post-translation tasks. So until now, in the first 2 sessions, we've seen essentially pre-translation, task. We've seen how these tools can help translators, in their work. And so what we're going to do now is move slowly towards actual translation issues more and more. And next session, the last session will be next week, and we will just talk about translation next week. This week, we're going to talk about post-translation. I want to show first, with these tools, what they can do really in terms of helping translators and researchers in their work in a variety of tasks. But of course, translation is a focus, and we'll have one last session just on that. And you'll see we'll have pretty amazing prompts to show you next time on complex passages in Tibetan, and see how we can yield, all the power. How we can make sense and use the power of these LLMs when we're working. So today, without further ado, I'm going to talk about the 4 noble prompts. And as always, I'm going to use the slides, go a bit fast, because we want to go to the case studies. We'll make things more concrete, but the slides will be available. And if you want to refer to that, there'll be examples, there'll be more information in the slides than what I'm going to necessarily talk about today. Okay, so what we've seen last time was how to do essentially 3 things, I'd say. One was how to design a prompt that's structured and clear, and how to do active prompting, which means having iterative process of asking and querying the model. So not just being happy with one answer, but going into a full-on process of keeping prompting and prompting and prompting, which is a change of philosophy, because we're used to ask for answers that are definitive, or that are going to be, we ask a question, it's clear enough, then we get an answer. And if the system is designed quite well in a linear system, you get the best possible answer. And that's not, we've seen how these tools work. So there's this approach where active prompting is important, mining the answer you get as an output in a kind of chain of operations, right, of questions. So that was the second thing we saw. And the third thing we looked at together was, how you can harness the power of the tools to get to perform practical tasks. And what we've seen is that these tools can actually very easily speed up the process of some tasks, or extend the scope of some tasks, of some operations that we would do. So that's what we've been doing so far. And today we want to go beyond that and look at fairly complex prompting strategies. I call them the 4 noble prompts. And essentially, we are going to talk about agentic prompting, algorithmic prompting, chain of thought prompting, and tree of thought prompting. And we'll see that there are different strategies that can be deployed in different environments for different types of query. And I will show you an example today of two prompts, agentic and algorithmic prompts, and show the differences with the same tool. And that's quite interesting to see that you get absolutely different results in a way, depending on how you prompt the LLM. And next week we'll look more in detail, at a paragraph, fairly complex Tibetan passage in in the Abhidharma tradition. And there we'll look at how we can get better translation from what the translation tools I will show can do through chain of thought prompting and tree of thought prompting. And we'll really go into detail next week on these two amazing strategies of prompting and showing, how they can help translators, researchers on a very practical level. So now we're really going at the level where rubber meets the road, so to speak. So today, maybe let's start with agentic prompting. This type of prompt is giving autonomy to the LLM to decide what tools it is going to use. And the way it works is, remember, we have always the possibility in ChatGPT, in Claude, in Google AI Studio to have a project knowledge base, meaning you can upload PDFs, you can upload text files, you can upload CSV files. So fairly simple documents. So you can copy and paste, for example, I will show you today, the Tibetan text of a sutra from an e-text that's available on the Vienna University website, the RKTS organization, amazing tool for us working in the field. You can download the text, copy and paste, and then you have the text of your source text or a text you're interested in and start querying, right? This text can be fed into the project knowledge together with other PDF you have, like if you scan some articles you're interested in because you have a translation or research project that's related to them, then you can use all this documentation. That's what we showed, how you create this documentation, how you upload it in the knowledge base, and how you can use it. So fundamentally, we still do that. But here, with this prompt, you will give the possibility to the tool to choose what, so the LLM will choose what tools, and by tools, we mean resources, approach, methodology, even sometimes, what is the best way to answer the query. And it's very interesting because you are not doing, what you do in the algorithmic prompting, which is what I've been using a lot, I think, in the past sessions, in this chain of operations that are very detailed and very well defined, where you, like an algorithm, like a procedure, where you say, okay, step one, do this, step two, do that, step three, do this, right? And with agentic prompting, like here, you will, for example, organize your text, a text from the Tibetan Buddhist canon, and you want to categorize the text by century or by, doctrines. And so you will give a few resources in the project knowledge base to the LLM, and then you will say, okay, you will script to, tell the LLM, here are the tools you have at your disposal to answer my query. Okay, this is what I want and everything first. And then you say, now choose the tools you think are the most adapted to your thinking process to answer the query. And then the model will autonomously decide how to use the documentation. So you're not scripting in the sense of an algorithm here, which is a different strategy, where you go with, a step-by-step instruction approach, where you define the exact procedure, right? This is very good. It's a very good prompting strategy too, and it works very well in some contexts. For example, one context that's really good is if you have mined with corpus linguistic tools or text mining algorithms, a large corpus of text, which I've been doing a lot in the course of my own, translation and research journey. Then you have metadata about the corpus about text, like for example, list of collocations around a central key text, In that case, algorithmic prompting is going to be very, very structured. You don't let the model do anything. You want the model to just, for example, analyze all occurrences of a term in a corpus and tell you, okay, what are the main topic, everything. So you design a list of steps to be followed by the model. And in that sense, it's very linear, right? You don't ask the model to add anything from its data training. You don't ask the training data. You don't ask anything from in terms of approach. You don't ask the model to deviate from the approach because you know your procedure is accurate and you want to have results that can be replicated, for example, right? So you will follow this approach in that case. And here the prompts can be, for example, here, step one, split the text into paragraphs or chapters. I will show you an example where it's a chapter, search for key terms, extract full sentences with matches, summarize usage context, and create a quick table, a quick like a keyword in context table, right? So you have the keyword in the middle, you have context before and after the keyword. That's a corpus linguistic classic, type of table. And then summarize findings. So let me know what is there. And if I don't know if you remember, but in the I think it was the first session, I analyzed the corpus of Köthen, Turchimulam, Kadampa master from the 13th century, and I did just that. So I produced a table, right? A quick table with nconc, which is a very great corpus linguistic tool, and then I asked the LLM to help me process the results. And that was all about the Bodhicharvatara and the way Köthen relates to this text. So how he received the text, how he taught the text. Did he teach anything about the text? Did he write anything? So all these questions I had were answered very well by Claude in that context. So that's algorithmic. Now, chain of thought, I'm not going to say too much today. I'm going to switch to the case studies. But essentially, you design a query so that the model will go through a reasoning process, and you can say, okay, you go step by step, and at each step, consider, the evidence, for example, textual evidence. And we want to know essentially how you think or process the information. And here, the key is that you want the model to be transparent about this, approach it follows when it's processing this information and why it goes for this or that solution. And then you can even add some in the script. You can ask feedback loops, so you can ask the model to consider, to verify the thinking, to consider another option. You can make it more complicated. So the trigger phrases in the prompt are, it's this step-by-step thinking, right? Walk me through your reasoning, break this into manageable steps, and let me know how you reach a conclusion at each step of your thinking process. And that will, for example, generate a very structured answer on the part of the LLM. If you do that with Claude, since we've been mainly focusing on the Claude AI tool, which is very good for Buddhist studies, then Claude will give you as an output a chain of operations, and we will see that next week. The tree of thought is a bit more complicated. You have multiple competing hypotheses. You ask the model to consider different hypotheses, and then to have a parallel exploration and a comparison of what these hypotheses, how they fare when faced by evidence, for example, textual evidence. And you can ask as well the model to synthesize the findings once it's been thinking through a set of different hypotheses. And so a tree of thought, because in that case, the thought process is not linear anymore. It can run in parallel threads that will inform one another at different stages of the process, which is a very powerful mental model in a way that I guess we could all benefit from, instead of going into our own tunnel vision, right? And starting from point A, we go to point B and stuff. So here the model formulates a set of hypotheses, verifies, and then the results will be or can be used in the parallel threads, so that you reach a conclusion that we have considered several possibilities. So anyways, I'm going to leave it there for the time being because we have a lot of things, and I will use the slides next week for the example, because we have a lot of ground to cover. So the slides are there. Can have a look at them. But essentially next week I'll go through that, and yeah, then we'll be definitely taking a few examples, practical examples about that. So now we are in the translation slash post translation, stage. You have questions, or you want to add maybe a text to your research project. And one thing that's very that I notice in the work, of a lot of translators, etc., translators, um, and academics too, is that you are going to very often be interested in a text you haven't read yet for a reason, either because there is a narrative you are interested in and you want a narrative element to be identified possibly in other text, and know if this is something you should consider, could help you translate the text you're actually working on, or you just want to, all there is to know by crisscrossing variables. For example, you want any kind of discourse taking place in that particular location with these persons. For example, I remember years ago I was translating Mayana Sutra, and there was this whole discussion about Amra and Mongo and all that, and there was a metaphor. I forgot the name of the sutra actually. It's funny, but there was a whole metaphor about the Mongo, and that drove me crazy. And at the time, we didn't have, these little things. So the whole narrative in the Mayana story about a Mongo, and you're like, what? I mean, and you look for that, and it's complicated because it was related to two persons. So the Buddha and I think it was Bodhisattva, and there was a whole narrative, a metaphor and narrative at the same time, interwoven in a way. And so yeah, I had to manually search and everything, and nowadays it would be so fast because you could do this very quickly. And so these LLMs can help you process these kind of questions. Like give me, you go with this encom tool, for example, and find everything that has all these like words. But then even if you have a lot of information to process after that, the LLM can help you. And then you can go into a discussion. Yeah, but I'm not interested in about the, micro growth or something. I'm interested in this story and everything. And you can go into a dialogue, and that's what is useful there. So the most basic level, if you feed here, right? So we have our Claude, that's where you can write your prompt. That's the chats, and here is your project knowledge. So here you can keep adding documents. I added a curtain, so the author I just talked about. I'm very grateful to Kamapunso, who actually transliterated all the works of Curtin, published a wonderful book with all this text. So I used the e-text of his commentary on the Bodhicitta. It's actually instructions, practice instructions. For those who have been there in the previous sessions, we have a project at Sadhara on Bodhicitta and Shantideva's works. And so we've been trying to source and track down all the commentaries we could find. We landed on this Atisha's very interesting commentary called Tsunche Koro, so the scythe chariot, it's kind of weapon chariot with wheels and blades right on them. And so here that's a text that is in this particular tradition, Kadam tradition, in which, as we know, the Bodhisattva was one of the most important texts. So here, say I don't know what to find there, and so I'm interested in the Chundruk here, and I go with okay, and you see that's very algorithmic at this stage. Step one, read Tibetan text in file, okay? Step two, I am interested in named entity recognition, so assign what is the context. And then the task is identify and make a list of all persons, datas, and places, Maya technical terms in this text. So we're talking here about, very basic exploration. What is this text really about? Who are the main characters and everything, and all this. And so here we have our result, So result at the end is a lineage. So that lineage is all there, which is very nice. Mastery, so it's giving me mastery, is not on. So we're in the not on tradition of the Kalam, school. Then we have technical terms, so it's giving me a lot of technical terms, as you can see, about the essentially the Bodhisattva path in the Mahayana, basic Mahayana stuff. So that's what I expect. And so you see, this is long. And so the token limit is hit, meaning for each answer, a lot of LLM can give you just so much information. And then you have to ask, okay, continue or use another message if you hit your token limit. And I mentioned that before. It's a nice little trick to get longer answers from the LLM tool. So here it goes through the next, list, add some like we have the boomies now. So I expect something really about the path, the boomies, and then, different, of course, 7 factors of enlightenment. So different technical terms related to this context. So it gives me a sense of what's going on. But, we're really talking about entities. We're not talking about discourse here, right? So we're talking about, the question is not about what is in the text in terms of content, doctrinal content, narrative content. The question is, what are the entities, persons, places, terms, this kind of like named entities as we call them in corpus linguistic. And NER for Tibetans, it's called NER, named entity recognition. So in NLP, in Tibetan NLP, natural language processing, which is very useful to, mine text and corpus and corpora, what you have as a problem very often is that you need to have a sense of what entities are and how you define them. And it's not easy because you have to have a kind of ontology, you have to have, um, tools, resources to do that. So in English, if you want to do it, for the English language, it's easy because linguists have worked on that. But for Tibetan, it hasn't been easy. And I'm showing you this because LLMs are fixing that. And if you really want to be rigorous, you can crisscross different tools and use them and use the results. Like, for example, you can ask the same question in ChatGPT, in Gemini, and in Claude AI, and then you concatenate the list of, their list into one, where you have a pretty good solid list of entities in a text. So that could be interesting for the reasons I was explaining earlier. You may want to, like that, be able to take a deeper dive in narratives or doctrinal discourses. All right, so list all text reference or mention in this text. So you can see my prompts are very poor most of the time because I'm not doing what I'm preaching, which unfortunately is not the problem I have only in this field, I suppose. But I mean, this is a repeat. This is a very poor prompt. Don't do that. It's just like it illustrates how good the model is at still making sense of all these queries. So here, I want to know if there is any text. And then I'm getting this. You see, it's quite interesting because that's what I'm interested in. And see, if I want to know, okay, should I consider this text? Okay, we have 2 texts. So the Bodhisattva, Shiksha Samudaya. I'm like, right on. We have to read that. I have to look at that. So anyways, there are chapters well mentioned. It's pretty detailed. And the reason why it's so detailed is because there's a system prompt. Remember, I ask the model, if we go back here, as a system prompt. So you are a Tibetan Buddhism academic with knowledge, because here I want to go, on this academic level of like being, very accurate about results and very analytical, in terms of the results. But at the same time, I want a Dharma feel too. I want some, I want as well Tibetan sense of like the language and how these things are part of someone's like environment in terms of practice, culture, and all this. And so you see, you can have instructions like that, right? To make sure that Claude understands the context and will be as well sensitive to all sorts of issues you think are important, or to query like criteria methodology you want to have there. So that's basic. That's basic, but you see how crazy it is, because if you have been involved with this literature, you know that it's already pretty like, it's like literally when you look at the prompt, it's just like 10 seconds to get the result. And for us, it would take hours. But now I'm going to show you something more fun, more complex. And that was a simple first, like, like a shot at this entity recognition. But now I'm gonna work on Mahayana Sutra. I translated Sandhya Sutra, and I wish I had these tools when I started translating it for 84,000 back then. But now I'm still like looking at it and working on different aspects of terminology. So that's a good. It's a good thing that we have all these new approaches to this text. So I'm going to show you first the algorithmic prompting, and it's a fairly complex query, as you can see, that I designed together with ChatGPT o1, which is one of the best reasoning models. Was a lot of duplication though, I thought, but anyways, it works quite well. And then after that, I will show you about the same type of queries. I mean, I want to kind of know the same thing, but through a different prompt. And the prompt is agentic in the R case. So now we're going to go with the algorithmic. And so here, I want to express my gratitude to organizations and big translation projects, that we're so lucky to have fortunate in this time and age. I mean, 84,000 for canonical text because they produce a lot of resources too that they share with the community. So they have a glossary, they have amazing resources that every translator can use. So it's free access. We have the Kensei Vision project as well. That's now really producing a lot of translation glossaries, and they're working on this cat tool too that I will mention next week a little bit more. And then of course the Sajra translation, initiative for years now that that gave us this amazing, collections in English, the Damnangzu and the Shishadzu. So a lot of like huge and foundational, materials are now available online in different formats. I have glossaries, footnotes, a lot of data. And here I'm using 84,000 resources. So they have a glossary in Excel format. So I split it into, because when I put the whole thing, and it's very interesting, I think, to mention that when I put the whole glossary in my knowledge base, I exceeded the number of tokens I'm allowed to have there. So what do we do when that happens? We chunk. So I just extracted a few things first, like persons, places, and 84,000 glossary is very comprehensive. It's big, and so we have a lot of like person names there, places that have been identified in the course of translating the conjure. So we're going to use this, and we're going to ask. So that's you see the documentation, the tools in a way. So we'll go there. So if we look at that, this is my documentation here. You see the project knowledge. So you will see how I'm using these resources. But essentially, I'm asking the Claude to tap into this. And with algorithmic querying, you go through a procedure, as we have seen, that is fairly linear, right? So you have, first I explain the task, and then look, I'm saying follow this step-by-step workflow carefully. So read the entire sutra text, okay? Extract every mention of, compare this list to the provided glossaries, note which entities are present in the glossary, which entities are not there. I mean, I'm going with the step-by-step 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just follow that. So now there are instructions too for the output, right? So I hit this, and I have this little magic thing here that you can use all the time. Use several prompts if token limit is hit, which means I can have longer list, longer outputs. All right. So I never told the title, the text to Claude, and you see that's what I'm getting. So okay, it's okay. Step 1, this is a Sandhya Sutra. A key Yogacara text. I don't know about that because even if the Yogacara, masters used it as one of their main sources, whether the text itself is Yogacara is another question. I would think not personally, but that's interesting, and that's why I'm highlighting it, because you see we still have to be critical about what we're getting there, and but it's not fundamentally wrong that the text is very important in the Yogacara tradition of Mahayana Buddhism. So all right, so now we go there, and yeah, there comes your hands D106. I didn't provide this information, so that's very good too. That's correct. And D here is the witness, sigla in the University of Vienna RKTS system, and 106 is the sutra number in that particular collection. All right, we're good. So person mentions. So here I have a list of like the main, each chapter as Vishalamati, Gunakara, and all that. So that's listed there. That's correct. That's good. Other reference person. Okay. Then we have a list of key locations. All this is good. Here it's not giving me a very detailed answer, but that's okay. Key technical terms now. So we have the three natures. Okay, that's good. Right now, the question is about the Antara Sutra. And so it's quite, I guess, for the model, it has to extract what is really key at this level, right? There's a lot more. And then inferred. So that's quite funny, here that the model is connecting Sangha and Vasubandhu, Risiwai. It makes sense, as systematizers of the teachings. Okay. And Maitreya has 5 treatises and all this because of 3 natures and all that. Okay, we're good. So now I'm prompting again, always algorithmic, strategy here. So same thing, but I want to go into chapter 5 now and get more detailed answers. So the first were very general. So now I go with the long prompt, and okay, I analyze chapter 5 of the Sandhamachala Sutra step by step, blah, blah, blah. So yeah. Okay, so like the main persons, all right, that's correct, that's good. Then have technical terms. So the chapter is about the Alaya Vijnana. It's really where, in the first 4 chapters are more about how Mahayana differs from the Shavaka, Abhidharmic conceptions and all this. And the 5th chapter is where the sutra really switches and goes high in the gear of what will come to be Yogacara theories and doctrines. So we are this part at this really junction in the sutra, and all these very technical terms about the Alaya Vidina and all that are definitely what are the main terms in chapter 5. So that's good. So now matching the terms appear in the glossary, it's good, and then inferred. So again, the Sangha. So it's quite interesting because he's relating to the Mayana Sangraha. It could have mentioned other texts that are, closer to that. But anyway, yeah, and Trimshika as well. I think it's based really on keywords there. And you see that's the kind of information now you want to take with a grain of salt, because this information is not provided by me in the project knowledge. It's something that's like where the model is relying on its training data essentially. And so why is it important? I want to explain this really a little bit here, is that if the model was trained on the Mahayana Sangraha, had good translations and good information about that, but not on other maybe even closer texts, they're not going to show up there, and they're not in the project knowledge, so they're not in the training data. So the answer you get is based on what information was fed into the model during the training stage, and that's something really important to keep in mind. And that I really wanted to show you this, because this is fundamental in working with the model, is starting having a sense of what is coming from my own project documentation and what is the model injecting through training data. And that can be a lot less reliable. So particularly for people doing our job, like of translating or researching about this text, this is where we want to be extremely careful. The moment we are relying on training data, we have no sense of what the scope of this data is. And so it's very difficult to understand the relevance then of the information provided by the model on this basis. So we have to be always careful there. So now I want to turn to the technical terms there, because there are 2 or 3 issues there upon which you can really fail in a way at translating the chapter correctly. Uh, we'll see how Tielemans 1997 wrote a kind of like, a review or translation of the Sunday Dimensional Sutra and criticized this precisely. And so here I'm interested in this. And the algorithmic prompting is resulting in this output. So we have a lot here of technical term related to the LLM, and the whole process of, the Vasanas on that. That's okay, but I don't find what I'm looking for here. Although honestly, everything it's very good. You have the metaphorical terms that are identified is very good. The relational terms too, are there, and that's pretty impressive. It's quite good. It's really good. I mean, you have that, that, but there's more to it, as we'll see in a second. And here I'm saying, okay, so give me a practical checklist of key points for a translator who wants to translate chapter 5. What should I be aware of? And that's quite amazing because I think, for a lot of us, these tools, if you're already experienced Dharma translator, who has been working on a lot of text their entire life, or if you're an academic who's been really as well, specializing in one area, all this is not maybe very helpful because you know your stuff and you know everything there is to know almost about that, so you're good. But for younger people, maybe you want to learn, how to translate. We want to, learn how do you set up your documentation? How do you translate? What should you be aware of? How are you careful about this or that? Then it's very, very interesting. Like I would really think that that would help a lot. And we'll see the agentic model prompting is even better. But anyways, it's telling you, and that, for example, is so important in the Sankhya Mochana Sutra because a lot of Sanskrit possessive compounds like the Wordtrees, for example, right? They appear in the form of a Tatpurusha, but they are nominalized in the sense of a possessive compound very often. And this is not indicated by a possessive particle in Tibetan. So you have a lot of very important points being made there. The consistency when you're dealing with metaphorical language to preserve parallel structures and to make the metaphor work. All this like the terminology, how this is going to echo, in other chapters. Did you think about that when, your technical term will like have to fit with something else? So there are a lot of like good pieces of advice there that, I won't go too much into detail, but a lot of like good points and how you should check what you're doing. So anyway, a good task, a good like a list of and I'm asking for even a more specific question on key ways to translate. Like how do you do more detailed questions about how do you translate this? What kind of like what should you be aware of when you translate these terms? Translation is difficult, as we know. There are issues, and particularly with these doctrinal texts, of semantic overlapping in terms of the semantic range of a term in Tibetan or Sanskrit and how the rendering term in English is going to cover this semantic space. Sometimes it may end up being just a subset or maybe being over pervasive, right? Compared to the original term. So there are a lot there to think about, and that's what this script is giving us, in terms of okay, think about this in different contexts. Make sure you're not translating things always in the same way because it can mean slightly different things in different contexts. Things we all know, but honestly, you can go deeper and ask for examples in this text. And the text at this stage, let's say, hasn't been translated yet. So meaning, it's even before you start your translation project, you can start having a sense of what is what could be problematic or what could be, issues to be addressed in your translation. But let's go now with a kind of monster, agentic prompt where I am not giving, look at that, I'm not giving a step-by-step process anymore, right? Here, I'm saying, okay, so that's the same thing. I'm talking about first the Claude like role and the documentation. And then I'm going with, okay, here. So act as an autonomous agent identify all these things, cross-check references. So feel free to consult or combine any of the tools, sutra text and glossary, in any order or method you prefer. So important constraint, remain accurate to the text. Do not invent information unsupported by the sutra or glossaries. So I'm trying to restrict the scope of the tools to the project knowledge so that we don't go into the training data actually, right? So here there are formats like rules to guidelines, and then, giving the final prompt, please analyze the text using your chosen method. All right. So it goes there, identifies the title perfectly, key person, the places, we've seen that. So it's until now very similar to the, prompt, the algorithmic prompt, no big differences. And now we turn to chapter 5. And this is where, so I'm asking to follow the same process essentially, but to deal with chapter 5 now. And this is where it's getting really interesting. So first, the tools I'll use. So it's telling me I'm going to use these glossaries and these two scholarly articles. I never asked Claude to use this to use Tielemans 1997, Muller, 2011. I never asked that. So that's the tool choosing to use the PDF there. And if we have more PDF, it's not using Kato, for example, a Japanese article about chapter 5. So it goes there, and then it identifies doctrinal terms. And look at that now. So here, it read the articles. It read the articles. And it's saying me, you're going to have to be careful about bimba and pratibimba, which is really like suknyin, right? And the thing, which is definitely a translation point to think about and to be careful about. You're going to have to think about, the translation of the AI-LLM. So that's the key terminology here. And already, wow, that's like issues that we have, but interaction between the simultaneous arising as well. So that's definitely now the metaphor, I think, with the waves and how they're perceived by consciousness. So that's definitely another point of doctrine. And then, he's telling me as well, giving me information about how the Chinese was useful to make sense in 2011. And, I worked with Tom Tielemans, who was very kind enough to spend time with me, and we exchanged a lot when I translated the text. And he always insisted on, of course, the necessity to look at the Chinese translation by Xuanzang, and looking at really the Chinese in case the Tibetan wasn't clear, which is a great piece of advice. And here you see you have this kind of approach to, which is amazing. So now I'm going a more detailed question. I want a more detailed list. So I'm asking for all the list, all the terms, the key term in this passage. So here I have, this bimba pratibimba thing. It's very interesting because they categorize in categories too, you see? So it's giving you a kind of context and how they interrelate possibly in the original text. So we have, of course, the saying natural phenomena. They're going to be metaphors, states of mind, and so on. So I'm asking here why you didn't use Tielemans 1997 in that case, and say, okay, so you see the prompting. Now I'm going into active prompting, and it goes there. And the article is really an important article for whoever wants to translate this chapter 5, and look at what is here, like super interesting. So we have this Yogakshema issue that's been translated in Tibetan as a Drupadan Dewa Chikpa. And then, we have this really difficult term that is very easy to mistranslate, that's identified from the documentation. And so, which means basically having the same destiny, sharing the same, vicissitude, but in this sense, it's really the same destiny, becoming enmeshed to the point where you're going to be, sharing whatever happens to the other thing. And here we're talking of the alaya vijnana and the body. So it's very interesting that the model can process the article and give you something that's really correct. So here you go with like, okay, now give me a detailed overview of the technical terminology in this chapter and pitfalls I have to avoid while translating it. Method, use the tools of your choosing. Consider our previous exchanges above, though. That active prompting. We don't start from scratch every time we build that, right? Output one. So I want the fine points based on available scholarship, and then any kind of issue you can infer from the documentation. Output one. And look, it's really quite amazing, really. It's giving me, okay, avoid translating Bimba as archetype or anything. So there's a whole discussion there in the article, but on the best translation for Bimba Pratibimba, consciousness terminology. So here as well, like a few, a few, a few pieces of advice we can follow or not, but it's just saying, okay, you're gonna have to think about that and the whole like related terminology too, how you want to go with that. Now, this term is there, which I think is really great because it's something you can't really know necessarily. You can't make it up. You're going to have to know that, find it somewhere, read it. So it's there. And it's saying, okay, the meaning is completely different in the Pramana tradition and the context of yoga, and particularly in the Yogacara tradition, clearly, when we're talking about the Alaya Vijnana. So you have to find a better translation for that. And that's going to be a point you're going to have to think about. Now, it's inferring different issues too. And it's very good because it's saying, okay, you have to be careful there. So that's probably derived from what we just said, this point here. But you have a lot of issues to think of. You have the epistemological framework, the relationship between direct perception and then conceptual overlays. So meaning like propuntia and conceptualization and all this. So you're gonna have to know about that, and it gives you the area here for which you may want to do some reading or ask for, okay, what kind of resource could help me, better understand these points. If we don't know enough about all this, then maybe we have to, know more. And I'm very serious about that because actually, when Monseigneur Lamotte had done best translation of the Sandinamachan Sutra. It was published, I think, in 1935, and until very recently was the best one. And the chapter, the Maitreya chapter, though, which is the sixth chapter, I think, I think I remember, on meditation, right, is not good in Lamotte. It's not good because Lamotte was trained in the Christian tradition, essentially, and in the classics, and had no idea about that. And at that time, Buddhist meditation was not really a thing, right? So this chapter doesn't work, and that's in spite of Lamotte being an amazing scholar and translator. So the translation was done into French. This chapter is a fail. If you read the chapter Lamotte translation, the Maitreya chapter as something Lamotte translate, it just doesn't work. So yeah, that's the thing here. It's quite good to have a list of semantic fields and doctrinal discourse for which we have to have a feel or some knowledge or some experience as translators. That's very important. So the model is doing that. And then I go on and I ask as well a whole checklist, of key points for any translator starting this translation project. So you see, it's referring to Wangchuk's commentary, Korean author, was translated into Tibetan and became a whole part of the hermeneutical debate too in Tibet. So a lot of a good advice there, So a whole detailed list of points to consider and knowledge to have, and as well you see translation procedure. So it's very interesting. It's going into the specifics of how to define terms, how to work to see the differences between terms that are very very related but not quite the same. And so whether we would agree with everything that's there or not is not, I think, the point really. Is just highlighting how we have to be really really careful about a few key issues, and and being aware of them while we do the translation work. And all this is, we haven't read anything yet, right, about the fifth chapter itself. So that's quite impressive, I'd say. So we see we had two different prompts, one algorithmic, the other one was agentive, and the key difference essentially between the two is that if your prompt is not, your procedure is not carefully thought out, in terms of the steps, the algorithmic procedure is going to be problematic because the model will just follow your own linear workflow and won't look elsewhere necessarily, as opposed to the agentic approach where the model will be able to tap into the project knowledge and then compensate for any anything lacking in your own original prompt. So that's, I think, really two key points when you use these approaches. So if you're sure of your process and you want to be in charge of the process, control it, be able to replicate it, verify the output and everything, thinking algorithmically is really a good thing. Sorry. But if you want to take advantage of the model being able to do things by itself in a way, things you may not have thought about, then um, the agentic prompting strategy may be better. All right, I'm gonna pause here for a second. I don't know if you have questions, Marcus.
No particular questions to
Okay.
note at the moment. Anyone have any questions? Send them over.
All right, so let me know. We can talk about the two prompting strategies more again if there is any question about them later. So now I'm going to move on to another tool, and that's corpus exploration. You have your translation going on, but there is maybe a text you're interested in, a corpus. You can mine through these, text mining strategies the other text. And so here that's a word tree that essentially shows collocation. It's a it's a text by Longchenpa, very important in dilemma. It's like, it's just something that you would want to maybe consider when you're working about Buddha nature and Chenpa's interpretation of it, which I was working on. So you would like look at text and try to understand what in the corpus, what text may contain this terminology and doctrinal background, and then make sense of it without having to read hundreds or thousands of pages. And so here I'm giving access to the model. I mean, Claude has access to all these word trees. And I'm asking the model essentially to mine this in terms of discourse patterns. I want to know what is found there. And these kind of tools is super important because the input is very controlled. So there's nothing like the model can hallucinate. So the data is, okay, we have to make sure the model is restricted to using these materials to answer queries, but essentially it restricts the scope of possibilities and bad answers. And so it's giving me a kind of overview of the text on different key terms. These terms, they've been selected, so the terms at the center, because the key terms in the text. So there was what is called a TF-IDF done, which is an algorithm that gives you keywords for a given text that is part of a larger corpus to get a sense of what the text is really. So we have Nong, we have Nimpo, we have Langshin, we have this text, these few key terms in, of course. And so that's interesting because, for summarization or for a more technical approach to the text that relies on technical terminology, more accurate, more grounded, this is better than just having a summary in a way. You have really different layers of discourse that you can identify in the text, and then you can start querying on that. So here I'm adding now word embeddings. Word embeddings is the semantic mapping I was talking about. So we're looking at, when he's talking about NIMPO, what is Longshenpa actually semantically associating NIMPO with? And here we're looking at closest neighbors, so the most semantically related terms. And that's very important because it's going to give you collocation, like as well, collocational terms. So terms that occur together with NIMPO in the text, so that's good. But that you can find as well through collocation, a collocation script or running nconc. But what it's going to tell you too is synonyms. So if they are always in opposition to an input, that would be easy, but they're not. And what the word embedding thing does is that it vectorizes all the terms in the work, look at how they relate to one another, and then for text, for terms are used in the same way, even if they never occur together, they will give you a very similar vector value. And so you will be able to map things. And here it is very interesting because you can see in that case that you find the whole discourse from NIMPO and of course, purification, Chongcha and all that. So you can see in which either context it's used or as a synonym to what, or in collocation to what, right? In co-occurrence to what. So it's giving you a lot of these like typical things. I mean, you wouldn't expect anything else almost. But then when I'm asking so we're talking about this info already, right? And I'm asking the model to tell me what the text may be, what Longshenpa may be talking about in the text when he's using the info. So I have a whole here already feedback, but then I can combine that with the word trees. So when you do that and you go one step beyond, you can ask as well more questions. For example, what are the different perspectives or frames, Mahayana, Dzogchen, etc., you see in these texts in relation to the Buddha nature idea. And here, what you would do in the old days, you would do a topic modeling. You will run a topic modeling tool on the text that will give you that. But here it's very interesting because it goes very fast and you are in this active prompting, dialogue with them all. So you go with, more exploration and so on. It's okay, classical Tathagata framework with the whole, purification of staying, and then the fact that the Tathagata will be dreamy. So the Buddhist, the Buddha's quality is obscured by adventitious, incidental defilements. Takshan, and that's very important because in the text it's definitely used to introduce this separation between Sam and Yeshe. So you start seeing already this kind of framework in the text too. And then you have other interesting things that we wouldn't necessarily think about, this phenomenological experiential frame where you have a lot of almost first person, subtext there, where it's not just doctrinal, but you see there's a kind of grounded in our reality and even in the body, discourse happening too in this text. So we have all these possibilities. You see, you feed the model with word trees, with word embeddings, semantic mapping, and then you keep exploring a whole discourse in the text that is very, very reliable and sturdy because of the metadata, the data you're using in your project knowledge. So here I did that for all the texts in which there's a significant amount of Deshin input terminology occurring throughout Longshenpa Sumbum. And I analyzed text by text based on the same data, what is the main discourse here, what's going on. And that's quite nice because we can ask as well Claude to produce what is called an artifact. An artifact is this. It's a little document that will open in this window in which, Claude will write the results, the answers to the query, and refine them in the course of this active prompting, this iterative process of questioning and answering. So it's quite interesting because you see, this text is definitely, it's a text on Tagalog literature, essentially, and its practice-oriented context is being well tagged from that perspective. You have other texts that are including some of the do where it's completely different. It's very Mahayana. It's a chapter, uh, on essentially Buddha nature in the Mahayana tradition, so it's well identified too. You have it in the Yishin, you have it in different um, context. And so if I want to look at it in a tantric context, I won't find it in one of the where it's just one chapter about Mahayana while Longchenpa is transitioning to Vajrayana and Dzogchen types of discourse, for example. So the texts are related to you know to these like different approaches, and it's very interesting to see how it's used. So I think don't forget this is taking like 5 minutes, right? And we're talking of here hundreds of pages. I want to go to this one because this one has been translated and worked on by David Higgins. It's the question and answer about distinguishing mind and wisdom. And here it's very interesting because, yeah, it's very doctrinal, the text actually, but it is as well about this distinction. And so it starts with the typical Mahayana framework and it goes into the Dzogchen path and how you use this, Mahayanist framework to make sense of the separation between Namshe, Yeshe, Sem, Rigpa, right, essentially. So very interesting that the model is not completely off the mark here. All right. Little break. Any questions? Or
Yeah, there's some questions. One person's asking about the types of files that can be uploaded here. The format of the Tibetan text. Does it need to be OCR'd or can PDF scans of Tibetan Pecha still be recognized?
no,
It
so
needs to be
that's
text
a
only.
good point. That's a very good question. You need to have what we call that an e-text, so digital text. And for the canonical collections, Conjure Tanjure can have them for example, the AIBS or the Vienna website. So you have different repositories where you can find the text and use them, and they're really amazing. You have a lot of tools. We're building up really, and we're so fortunate on the work of so many teams out there. And I apologize if I haven't mentioned all that, but we don't have time. But you have for canonical collections, the Columbia site, you have as well the Vienna site. You have a lot of like possibilities there. And Itata, I think, has a lot of stuff too. So, you can get e-text from these amazing projects who work so hard, to put all this online. So that's fantastic. That's one way to do it. You have BDRC to digitize a lot of these collections, a lot of these texts. The quality may vary at this time, but the good news is that we were on the call with Elie Roux, who is really following all the OCR developments very closely. And they have a tool that has been developed in cooperation with Eric Werner, which is, I think, available on GitHub that lets you OCR the text you're working on. And it's, I think, working quite well. So it's an amazing development, a new development, something we can use now in open access. You have, I think, Munlam AI. I tried to, where you can upload in their OCR. If you go on Munlam.ai, they have, an OCR tool there, and you can feed this tool. You can upload, scan an image of a page, Tibetan text, and it will be processed. So the other question is more in terms of quantity. If you have to do that for 500 pages, it's a bit, but if you do that for a short text or a passage, then it will work. And that's fantastic too. So a lot of good stuff. And I think that we are getting closer to having a full integrated, pipe of operations from us here down to alignments of different versions of a text when this is an issue. I'm not talking necessarily of critical edition because that would imply making choices as the person editing the text, but definitely a lot of the work involved in producing critical edition is going to be probably accomplished at some point by these models. or agents that will be trained on that specific task. That's training a lot of time to focus on areas such as better translation, all this, right? And and there too, then once you have a digital text, you can use the LLMs. It's difficult for LLMs to process images. It's easier, I notice, if you use something in English or French or German, Western languages, it seems, but Tibetan is not working well. And every time I tried, it didn't work. And it wasn't satisfactory at all. So I'm sorry. I think it's much better if you want to use one of these tools or get a text file.
Another question was back on the word trees. Did you add this to the query, or are the word trees already in the database/library?
Now, Wordtree is you have your e-text and you run this text mining algorithm in Python that is going to output word trees and all sorts of things. And there are a lot of different tools now. Word trees are quite nice to get a sense quickly of what's going on, but particularly if they're processed on the basis of key terms in the text. So for that, you have to identify your your key terms first for each text in the corpus. Then you produce the word trees, and then you let the LLM access that and process them. So it's a bit heavy as a process. It's but if you're working on a specific author's corpus or a canonical set of works, that's definitely very interesting to get a sense of what else could be useful, what else could be, related to my text. And then if you have doctrinal issues, that's a must almost to do this, I would think. So I've been trying to work on that, and I'm going to post next week the work I did on Longshenpa's corpus and the talk I gave at the Oxford Young Tibetologist seminar online on this more like linear approaches to corpus mining and corpus analysis. And I think it's very useful because if you're interested in, okay, what did Longshenpa or any other author say about that, right? Or how much terminology did he use or did they use about this or that? All these questions, it means that you have to think within the boundaries of not just one text, but one corpus. And that can be as well, depending on what it is you're doing, it can be a corpus not just of one author, but of canonical works or of related, sumbum as well. So if you're trying to understand difference between Dolpopa on, let's say, Deshenimpo and Longchenpa, roughly same time period, right? And if you want to know whether they intersect, so you can read, and a lot of people have done that. Stefan Aguirre has done a really good job on doing that. But if you want to dig deeper on that particular question, you need to look at a lot of materials. So that's where these tools are useful.
Great. There's one question several people have asked about a discount code for something, but I don't know what they're
Discord code,
referring
okay,
to.
the Discord invitation thing. If
Yeah.
you guys go on this website here, on this website, so that's the front page, right, of the tzadra.org website. Scroll down, and you're gonna find this here, this banner, right? And if you click on Learn More, you land on this page here. That's our Tzara Doma AI project. So collaboration with Mitra, Kurt Keitzer, and Sebastian Nerdish, and we have the whole webinars here. And at the very bottom of this page, scrolling down here under be part of our growing community, you have this link here. So if you click on that, you will have the Discord invite. And I am going to send out an email. And we maybe I was thinking, Marks, maybe we can post it on FB or Insta. It's okay, just to make the Discord invite available. And so, yeah, we can change the invite later, so we don't have to worry too much about spammers. Let's say we can have a week or two during which we 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 post it online everywhere so that it'll be easy. But here you have it. So if I click on that, I'm going to be redirected to the Discord server. Maybe I can actually show that a little bit. Okay, that's the server. Okay, so that's these are all the forums, right? Here. So we have news as well. For example, whatever is new, the new models coming up, right? Agents, all that. So we'll try to, keep everyone updated with this. Benchmarks as well. So the various models that are available, how they relate to one another, a task. We have a lot of resources. I will keep posting, different things here. For example, if you're interested in the slides, this is where you find them about the translation workflow. What else? The webinars recording and yeah, prompt engineering slides as well will be listed there. I will add stuff on computational methods. We're talking about that just now. And then here we have forums where we can exchange, as translators and researchers, we can post questions, we can share prompts, we can, say, hey guys, I have this passage I've been working on and
Mm.
I'd like to know that. What would you do? Or I've done that and that's amazing. For example, that would be cool too. You say you created a prompt and you think it's super interesting what's coming out of the prompt. Please share it. Share your alignments, translations. If you go on Mitra and you see that something is really amazing because wow, the model got that. Or if you go on Dhamma Mitra or Mulam as well, or Claude, and you're amazed by that because you think wow, that's crazy that the model can do that. It's good to share it, I think. And if you think, wow, the translation model failed, didn't work, look at that, it didn't get at all this passage or it doesn't understand that this is not what this term means in that specific context, please share all these, alignments of the original Tibetan or Sanskrit you used, and then, the English output or any other language, depending on whatever model you want to use. But yeah, that'd be great, honestly. And so that's a Discord channel. So it's functional. And I think we start having slowly, because we didn't make it too public so far, but yeah, people are starting joining slowly the mall. So there you go. And so super happy about that. And I try to keep everyone updated. I'll post as well tutorials here. So tutorials, very short ones. For example, how to use Claude, like 2 minutes, right? Or 1 minute and a half. I know I'm ranting too much. So that'll be, I promise I won't go over 2 or 3 minutes for this tutorial. So that it'll be easier to access. Okay,
Great,
so
great.
maybe before we leave, one last thing.
Mm.
We wanted to keep it short today. So, but I wanted to show you a last thing here. And I'm not going to spend too much time because this is a very complex discussion. Look how big it is. It's really long. And what is it about? We're working with Kurt to, understand whether the relationships, say, between contaminated dharmas and essentially, conditioned dharmas. So this, on one side, we have Samskrita, Sravana, Sravari. And so we're trying to really see there are different relationships between these two concepts in different traditions. So the Abhidharma tradition, later traditions, the Theravada as well. They have a different approach here completely, and that's very interesting. So in some traditions, the path is going to be conditioned but not contaminated. For example, right? So the Magga is not going to be, it's not going to be Asrava, but it's going to be Samskrita. And so it's very interesting because it's a complex Abhidharma point in a way, and the model is really, so you see here, the Marga as an Asrava Dharma. And so it's interesting, it's important for us here to know that there are tools to think, like O1, for example, is a reasoning model. That's the kind of conversations we can have with O1, you know. So not all Anasrava dharmas are Samskrita. And so, this complicated Abhidharma categories, terminology, you can explore it too. You can explore a lot of complex, bodies of discourse, of doctrines, of Tibetan Buddhism, of Indian Buddhism as well, of course. And then you can see the logical pervasion, which for translators is incredibly important to have a sense of, okay, if I'm going for this English term, is it going to fly in the face of what I said or in the way I translated another term that is related very strongly on a logical level, to that term in the original context? These are really important questions, particularly if you're dealing with philosophical and doctrinal discourses. We have to understand the logical and semantic, relationships between the network of technical terms in the source language, and we have to see whether we preserve these truth values, these logical values, in the target language. That's very important, and to do that, there are questions that are questions of pure logic, like what is a subset of what, or is this term semantically, under that term, right? These semantic relationships. So, or is it above, or is it including that? So you have a lot of discussions, and then the discussion, again, you see it's active prompting, so it's a complex discussion, goes on. And then you say, but wait, find me source for, because then we have a whole thing about the suffering. Everything is suffering, meaning all conditioned thing, but the path is anasrava. And it's like conditioned, but it's leading out of, so is it suffering too? You have a lot of questions like this to understand the whole context, how you want to translate things and, and preserve a specific tradition. So here, there's a whole thing on how, in the 3 seals or 4 seals, the discussion evolved chronologically in a kind of diachronic way, right? So you have sources, you have discussions. So we're talking now about a lot of the practice manuals that include a lot of discussions on these things, and then we compare them to shastras, Indian shastras, to see how they match. And we look as well at the Theravada in this discussion, the Theravada tradition. So you see, it's a very long discussion where you keep pushing, you keep prompting, and go through the whole maze of logical and semantic relationships about suffering, samskrita, and asrava, and you see how all these is dealt with, is categorized and structured as a discourse in different traditions. So these reasoning models, they let you do that, and they let you push them into saying, but wait, there's a contradiction in that case, because so is the path a source of suffering or not, and all this. You see, we have this whole discussion here now, how some statements have to be reconciled in a kind of more complex, doctrinal point. For example, in some tradition, you have to end up saying that only Sasrava dharmas are suffering, meaning even if they're Samskrita, they're not going to be all of them suffering. Only those that have asrava or afflictions and all this are going to, outflows, are going to be suffering. So it's important in some cases, because if you don't understand the deep doctrinal context, it's difficult to make sense of some text first, to understand, wait, why is he saying this now? Why is it if you always think everything that's conditioned is suffering, and you're in a text for which only, dharmas with afflictions are suffering because the path is without affliction, although it's conditioned, then you have to understand these things, right? That you're in a different doctrinal background here. And so different traditions, different sometimes interpretations of all these classifications. That's kind of really important to understand. You have models to help you think of the logic of things too. And some of these contexts is really important, because if you don't understand something, you can push them all and say, but wait, this is actually a contradiction. It doesn't make sense. So, like here, I wanted to say, but wait, what is the earliest statement about, like, you know, the statement that only defined phenomena are suffering or that conditioned phenomena are suffering? Make a list of both early Indian sources. So here I want to get a sense of the chronology of like how these discourses emerged, So discourse that only defiled phenomena suffering, or a discourse about like all conditioned phenomena suffering, knowing that defiled phenomena is a subset of conditioned phenomena. So you want to understand, then you can ask about the doctrinal emergence of things. And okay, let's go back and let's try to find, so we go to the Abhidhammakosha, the Mahavibhasha, of course, right? And then we'll end up talking about the Theravada tradition, the Pali Canon, all this, But anyway, so what I mean is that I'm going to conclude here. I think it's an hour and a half for today. It's okay. So stop sharing my screen. But yeah, that's the kind of things we can actually do now with these models. So we can go quite deep in these doctrinal discussions, see if we get it right, and if we're choosing the same term, we can use the models to say, okay, is my logic waterproof here? Did I get it right as a translator, right?
Mm,
Which is important. So you have someone to help you think about these things, and that person, the LLM, doesn't need to be necessarily always right.
mm,
That's the other thing. But it's like having someone, and some of us maybe are pretty isolated sometimes. I mean, we're working with our text, our computer, and all that. We're not necessarily involved, with the community until the work is done. So
mm,
having these kind of reasoning partners, so to speak, to see if everything we think we know is waterproof is actually, solid. It's a good thing too, right? To check that. All
mm.
right, that's it for me, I think.
Great.
And next week we can do the translation. I promise. So next week we'll look at actual translations and passages from the
Mhm.
different tools. We'll look at free tools, Monlam AI, Dhamma Mitra, and Claude. And again, teaser. We'll see how we can plug them together, and with a complex kind of script, a tree of thought script,
Mhm.
we can get the best of all worlds there. So that'll be the highlight and the final, I think, session.
Excellent. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for joining,
Thank you, everyone.
and we'll be back next week.
Hope
And
to
you can
meet you on
send more.
Discord.
Yeah. I was just going to say you can send more questions on Discord and use that. Please jump on there. That can become a real community for everybody to share ideas and talk through things. Uh, there's a question about Gesar on the wall behind you.
I know. Yeah.
It's
Well,
funny. Yeah.
you always need protection.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Care.